Welcome to the Erotic Realm podcast, where we explore the psychology of darker desires. I'm Em, and if you're new here, welcome. I'm a psychosexuality nerd with a background in psychology, sociology, medical science, and Tantra. I'm also in a 24/7 collared relationship, and I'm passionate about humanizing kinksters. Join me here for in-depth one-on-one conversations as we explore the fascinating world of eroticism, one erotic realm at a time. If you love what we're doing here in the Erotic Realm, I'd like to ask you a quick favor. Can you follow and rate the show on Spotify? It helps the show reach more people like you. And if you haven't yet, I'd love if you could subscribe to my Substack, Psychology of Desire. This is where I go even deeper into the science of symbolism, of desire, archetypes, and erotic evolution. You'll get access to articles, unique surveys and research, and behind-the-scenes access to everything we're building. Visit psychologyofdesire.substack.com. I'll see you there. And now for today's episode. The following is a conversation with Hawthorn, a 66-year-old genderqueer, bottom-leaning switch, pagan and erotic storyteller who opened up their marriage after 35 years and has been exploring sexuality, sensation, and soul ever since. We talk about what it means to navigate kink later in life, how Reichian psychology and pagan spirituality has shaped their erotic journey, and what it feels like to live as a sensation slut and sensual sadist. From the inner shifts of switching roles to the deep satisfaction found in erotic connection, Hawthorn shares stories, insights, and even a live reading of one of their own erotic writings. If you've ever wondered what desire looks like when it's rooted in ritual, evolution, and the wisdom of age, this is the episode for you. Enjoy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have with me Hawthorn. Welcome, Hawthorn.
Thanks, Sam.
Happy to have you here.
I'm pleased to be here too. Thank you.
You're welcome. So, by popular request, I've added a new opening question to the podcast, one that gives us a little peek behind the scenes. So I'd love for you to tell us, what are your interests outside of kink, whether it's your work, your hobbies, or just what lights you up when you're not deep in the world of BDSM?
Right. I work as a disability support worker.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's very rewarding. But once I finish there for the day, I put it aside and forget about it till the next day. I find that necessary for my mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Otherwise, I'm very into woodwork. I make kink toys and I'm also a practicing pagan, and I make tools for pagans to use in their practice, altar pieces and things like that.
Mm.
Uh, I love reading. I read fiction and non-fiction. Uh, Other than that, hanging out with friends and family is what I do.
Wonderful.
But
Amazing. I'd love to get more into your toy hobby a bit later, but for
yep,
now, I'd love to dive into your sexuality. Can you tell us about your sexuality? How would you describe it, Hawthorn?
I recently heard a term that I really like, and it's called fluidity.
Okay.
Like obviously that's the word I knew, but as it relates to, and I've thought about myself as fluid as
Mm-hmm.
relates to it. But I was listening to the Sex and Psychology podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
and they interviewed a person who'd written a book about sexual fluidity as an identity,
Mm.
and I really like that because it's very individual definitions, and I feel that my sexuality is very fluid in some ways. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So and for me, what that means is that like I'm attracted to a wide range of genders and practices and orientations. Uh, so, I can be, my sexuality can be very, very kinky, but it can also be vanilla as well. I enjoy all ends of that spectrum. It can be gay and straight. I enjoy all ends of that spectrum. And I can switch. I'm more drawn towards the bottom masochistic end of the spectrum, but I I do enjoy switching it up and taking the other side of the slash.
Mm-hmm. So would you say
Yeah,
that your sexuality's always been fluid, or do you feel like that's something you've grown into?
I think it's something I've grown into. It's always been fluid in the sense that when I've heard something that interests me, I've been willing to explore it. But
Mm-hmm.
when I grew up in you know in a world where sexuality was black and white. I didn't even know what homosexuality meant till I was about 12 or something.
Mm.
Um, and the word pufta was one that everyone used at the time. I didn't even know what it meant. I just thought it meant someone who, wasn't a good person.
Mm-hmm.
And I used that word in front of my dad one time, and he said, "Do you know what that means?" And I said, "Oh, it means someone who's a rat bag or something like that." And he said, "No, it just means uh, a man who loves another man." And I thought, that's a bloody stupid insult. What's wrong with that?
Mm.
So I didn't think I was same sex attracted at the time. I'd never really thought about it at the time, but later when I went through puberty and started getting exposed to the different ideas, I realised I was quite capable of being attracted to men as well as women. And then later, at the time, it was very binary, the perceptions of sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, I learned about ideas of transgender people and intersex people, and I ended up identifying myself as non-binary.
Mm-hmm.
So, so yeah, as ideas have come up, I've tried to look at them open-minded and see if they work for me or if they don't. So yeah,
Mm. So I've seen you've labeled yourself as non-binary, genderqueer, and gender fluid. Are all of
yep,
those labels that apply to you still today?
yeah, for sure, yep.
Hmm. So what does that mean for you? Does it mean that you feel that you have all genders inside of you? How would you describe it to someone that hasn't heard those terms before?
So gender doesn't feel terribly important to me.
Hmm.
Um, when I heard ideas that made me think about that, I didn't feel, like I'd thought of myself as male during the early part of my life just by default.
Hmm.
But then when I heard about gender variation and that, um, and yeah, like that was back in the days before even the word transgender was around. Um, but I just felt like, when I realized I didn't have to conform to what society thought male was, I could just express myself and identify however I want.
Hmm.
I I came across the Jungian idea of the anima and animus,
Mm.
and wanted to explore that within myself. And like I didn't have much knowledge or information around it, so one of the things I experimented with was same sex attraction, and found that I liked it. And so the more I've known, the more I've experimented. So yeah.
So you arrived at it through
Um,
an academic lens. Is that what you're saying? You found Jung's anima and animus as opposed to being around other people exploring it or attending an event and seeing this stuff happening and being attracted to it. Was it more an
yeah,
academic finding for you?
yeah, like
Mm.
the queer stuff didn't exist in my life,
Mm-hmm.
in my social life. It just wasn't a thing. And except that in the social group that I was in early puberty, like the worst thing a guy could be accused of was being queer or
Hmm.
gay or homosexual. Um, like it would absolutely ruin your social life if that rumor or that suggestion started about you.
Mm.
Um, so, and I hadn't felt any stirrings that way at the time, but then, yeah, like when I read about this idea that, yeah, humans have both sexes, and it was sexes at the time, gender wasn't a word that was used much,
Hmm.
had both within them, I started exploring that regardless of the social implications, although I wasn't open about it in my social circles
Hmm.
uh, until much later.
So, how old were you when this was happening, and approximately what year was it?
Um, I would have been around 16,
Hmm.
15, 16, um, which, when was that? That would have been late 60s, early 70s.
Mm.
I
Okay.
haven't got a pen and paper, so I
No,
can't
that's
work
fine.
out exactly.
Well, that's when people were starting to explore these things more in society, right? It was starting to kind of creep in a little bit.
Yeah, like, and
Mm.
shortly around that time, or shortly after, I saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and
Mm.
yeah, that opened up. That definitely got me got me turned on the idea of gender, like gender fucking, I suppose you'd call it,
Hmm.
and just that presenting as different as well. So it all sort of tended to it fell in line together.
Hmm.
Things reinforced each other like that.
Yep. Makes sense. So you've talked
Mm.
a lot about your sexuality. You mentioned a little bit about your kinky sexuality. I'd like to dive more into that now. I see that
Yep.
you describe yourself as a switch, sadomasochist, bottom, and kinkster. Do they
Yep.
still apply to you today? How would you describe your kinky sexuality?
Yep. Still pretty much that. It sort of it depends on the situation, who I'm with, and yeah, sometimes it just changes on its own that I'll feel more inclined to one direction than the other. But usually, I can also like adapt myself to my partners, what they're interested in.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm very much into masochism and receiving, you know, sensation.
Hmm.
That's probably my default. Um, but yeah, sometimes I get the desire to switch to the other side of the slash and express my sadistic side, but not as often as I do my masochistic side.
Hmm.
And referring to myself as a bottom is also a reference to the fact that I enjoy receptive anal sex
Hmm.
as well as receiving, sadistic attentions.
In terms of yourself as a sadist, you mentioned that you like being a sensual sadist. And I don't think I've had many people on the podcast yet that describe themselves in this way. What does a sensual sadist enjoy as opposed to maybe a pure sadist?
So I can't speak for anyone else, but
Hmm.
like when I'm topping someone, uh, I do enjoy giving strong sensations, but I also like to mix that up with sensual play, and that will depend on what the bottom I'm playing with is into. Um, but also, both my partners are like receiving sensation, but not intense sensation.
Mm.
So, yeah, I'll do. mildly sadistic things with them, like spankings and canings and flogging, but at a low intensity. And I'll also mix that up with a lot of you know purely sensual play, like massage and stroking and pleasurable sensations and
Mm-hmm.
soft sensations. So that's basic, and I'll do that. If I'm playing with a heavy sadist who also likes that, I'll switch it up with that. If the person I'm playing with is has a sexual element to their play, and we've agreed to do that, then we'll explore that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But if not, it's if they just want a purely sadistic, non-sexual, or even sensual and sadistic but non-sexual, if that's what they want, that's what we'll do.
Hmm. Fascinating. You've also mentioned a shift from thinking of yourself as demisexual to semi-demisexual. So I've heard of demisexual before, but not semi-demisexual. What does this term mean for you, and what was that evolution like for you?
Yeah, I don't know if that's a real term or if I made that one up. Um,
Right?
so I used to feel that I could only be intimate with someone I was in love with
Mm-hmm.
um, for a long time, and the few times when I had one night stands or one night stands, I felt quite dysregulated afterwards. It left
Mm.
me feeling not right.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose in the last, and when I've been married for 43 years. We were um, monogamous for like 35 of those years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when we opened our marriage up, still found that, I didn't like if I'd meet someone, play with them, and then nothing came of it. I'd feel crappy about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then a few years ago, I started going to sex parties. One in particular, it was called Curiosity at the time. It's called Luscious now. And started going to that, and I found it a very comfortable environment. And I started off only playing with people that I already had relationships with. But over time, um, they provide the opportunity at the parties for people to do open scenes and to announce them and invite people in. And I did one of them, and it was just a talking scene, but I really enjoyed it and got to know people. And I started getting more adventurous. And I suppose in the last year or so, I've done various types of play with people that may not have had a lot of interaction with before that,
Mm-hmm.
and I've found it very satisfying and rewarding. So that's that's how it changed
Mm.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say, I'm not fully demi, because I don't need an intense emotional attraction. I just need to have some degree of sense of connection and liking them. So, but it doesn't have to be intense for
Mm-hmm.
it to be, and it doesn't have to be repeated for it to be enjoyable.
Mm.
But
You mentioned a talking scene. Did I hear that correctly?
yeah,
Yeah, what does that mean? Because I haven't heard many people mention that before.
um, I do that a lot in different ways. So this one was one that was designed to be done with people that I hadn't necessarily interacted with before, and I called it positive objectification.
Okay.
And what had happened there was, a guy asked for people to do a scene where he was receiving sensation and words of affirmation and to be objectified, but in a positive way.
Mm.
And I did that with him just because that sounded intriguing to me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was, and I felt that the words flowed easily. It was easy to talk about, like he wanted objectification, so just about his appearance and body, and I found it very easy to do that. So I thought that was fun. I could do that with pretty much anyone, I reckon,
Hmm.
who was open to it. So I made an announcement that I was offering that at a party, and if anyone wanted to receive it, they could just come up and ask me if I wasn't busy with something else. And yeah, about half a dozen people came up, and I told them what I appreciated about their physical appearance. And I really enjoyed it, and it was quite popular. So that gave me a lot of confidence to interact with people that I didn't know,
Mm.
and I just yeah. So I repeated that, and later on I extended it. I also offered to like touch and stroke and like admire people physically if they're up for that, and we discussed the limits of that and the safe word to use around that. And so I sort of extended it like that and really enjoyed it. And from that, I got talking to people at the party and got um, more emboldened to offer, more intense scenes. The other way I do like talking scenes is with lovers. I might start with doing positive objectification with them, but then it'll move into also telling them what I want to do with them, and as well as being physical. Um, and everyone I've done that with and me have found it very enjoyable.
Hmm. I love the idea of the talking scene. That sounds really fun and also like a great place for people to start exploring in a safe way. So thanks for explaining that.
Yeah, it's a really cool way because you can take it, you know, as like mild or as wild as you want with
Hmm.
words, as long as you negotiate it.
Of
And
course.
you can try out different scenarios just in a fantasy realm that you're sharing. It's great.
Hmm. Yeah, beautiful. Now, one of the traditions on the podcast is to explore a quote about sexuality with you. And today's quote comes from Anne Carson. Anne is a Canadian poet and classicist whose writing feels like it's living right on the edge of intellect and eros, which makes sense because that's often where our deepest desires live too, right?
Yep.
Now, in her book, Eros the Bittersweet, she writes, Eros is the drive toward union with what we imagine we lack. And I find that really interesting because it suggests that desire isn't just about wanting, it's
Mm.
about a kind of imaginative hunger. You're reaching for something. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Does your erotic life ever feel like it's shaped by longing for connection, transcendence, or something once lost or not yet found? Or,
I have not so much the sense of something lost then found, but
mm,
yeah, before I opened my relationship, particularly, there was a deep sense of longing and lack
mm-hmm,
in my sexuality, um, and I explored that in a lot of different ways, including a lot of self-love practices and meditations, and spiritual erotic meditations. So I developed a strong sense of self-fulfillment around love and eros, but I still also felt that it was lacking in expressing that with other people,
mm-hmm,
like expressing it physically, um, until I started exploring, you know, ethical non-monogamy and polyamory and things like that, and started, you know, experiencing more physical eros in my life with other people,
mm-hmm,
and that definitely sated a hunger um, that I don't know had. It felt like my eroticism, my sexuality, and my sense of eros felt like an unhealing wound for decades,
mm,
and until I started filling it, and yeah, and I feel very fulfilled now. I've got a lot of love and eros in my life now. And yeah, it's funny. I feel more self-contained now that I'm experiencing love and sex and play and eros with other people. So
Mm.
yeah, I used when I was growing up, there was an attitude around masturbation that it was, you men really only did it. Probably men only did it, and no, I don't think anyone was thinking about that. I knew was thinking about women doing it at the time, but
Mm.
men only did it when they couldn't get sex with a real person.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I knew that was bullshit intellectually, I still felt that
Mm.
um, until until I started, until I experienced having more than one partner and experiencing lots of physical sex and kink play. Um, and still found I was horny when I wasn't with them. I still wanted to play with myself. So I realized, it's not that I'm, this desperate loser who can't get a lover.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I'm a really horny bastard. So so
Mm-hmm.
that was a nice realization. That was a moment of like um, self knowledge and awareness and satisfaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with self-love, definitely. Now, if
Oh, yeah, I'm definitely an advocate for it.
yes, if you're comfortable to share, I'm curious to hear about what the turning point was in your marriage that led you to open it up after so many years.
Um, Pretty much it was that I was dissatisfied with our sex life.
Mm-hmm.
We we we'd gone through some fairly difficult times with that, and it wasn't great. Um, and we'd started fixing our relationship a bit, but it still wasn't great in the physical realm. And I knew people that had gone to curiosity parties, and you know, everyone who I knew who'd been, told me I should go. I'd love it. Um, so yeah, but even before I went there, like I heard about it for years before I actually went, and even before that, I started forming relationships with people that I'd met at various, you know, social situations.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd had it, yeah. And I told my wife, I said, I'm not satisfied with our sexuality. Um, she was a lot less kinky than me at the time. Well, she still is. And I wanted to explore kink more, and
Mm.
I wanted to have more sex than we were having. So I told her that, and she was like, "Okay, well, do what you got to do."
Mm.
So yeah, that's when I started, playing with different people and exploring that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Well, that's lovely. She was so supportive.
she's fantastic. She's followed me through all my strange permutations, and
Yes.
she knows.
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, continue, please.
Yeah, like she's got good boundaries herself.
Mm.
So if she doesn't want to do it, she'll say no. That's your thing, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but also, she's growing and learning as well. So it's been a good journey together.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like it. Such a long time. Did you say 43 years?
Yeah,
Yeah, wonderful. Congratulations.
thank you.
So I'd like to move on to an article I want to explore with you now, Hawthorn. It's
Mm.
a study that I think you'll love. It's called What is Sexual Satisfaction? Thematic Analysis of Lay People's Definitions. So, in this article, instead of defining satisfaction in clinical or performance based terms, the researchers went straight to everyday people and they simply asked them the question, what does sexual satisfaction mean to you? And what they found was really interesting. Yes, pleasure and orgasm came up, but more often people actually talked about things like emotional intimacy, self acceptance, and connection, as well as a sense of alignment with themselves and their partner. And some people even described it as a spiritual or transcendent experience. So it made me think of
Mhm.
your take on eroticism, and I'd love to hear your reflections on this. How do you define sexual satisfaction in your body, your mind, or even your soul? And has that definition changed over time?
I think my awareness of it might have changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of spiritual sexual practices like sexual meditation and self-love practices. And while I found those like spiritually and somewhat physically rewarding, there was a sense of lack about it.
Mm.
And it wasn't until the physical and the spiritual emotional aligned that it started feeling complete to me.
Mm-hmm.
So um, yeah, I think all of those things are necessary, but for me, when I started, um, you know, experiencing a more physically satisfying sex life, that revitalized the mental, emotional, and spiritual practice.
Mm.
And I found that they interweave with each other and feed each other,
Mm-hmm.
and I feel much stronger around the spiritual and emotional side now. But I've always like been what's the word, Sus- sustained. I've always been fed by the emotional side of things and found that rewarding. But when the physical side of things also became satisfying and rewarding, it lifted everything. It
Mm.
just made the whole thing, like my whole experience of sexuality and pleasure, and that it just made it more fulfilling and satisfying than I could have imagined.
You open the fridge, there's nothing there. So what's it gonna be? Greasy pizza? Sad drive-through burgers? Dish by Blue Apron is for nights like that. These are the pre-made meals of your dreams. At least 20 grams of protein, no artificial flavors or colors, no chopping, no cleanup, no guilt. Keep the flavor, ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
So, one of the strongest themes in the study was that satisfaction comes from being fully seen and accepted. Do you agree that this is one of the strongest predictors of sexual satisfaction? Has this occurred in your own life? And can you remember a moment in kink or otherwise when you felt that kind of erotic alignment?
Yeah, I definitely feel that. One of the things I struggled with was feeling that I was undesirable,
Mm.
and it like even when I met play partners who were clearly into me as much as I was into them, I still had this feeling in the back of my mind that I was undesirable, and it was something a bit, they were just an anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it took a lot of playing with a range of different people and seeing their reactions to me as a player, but also as a person, that I started getting more of a sense that um, I am I can be desirable to like a range of people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like it took a fair bit of reinforcement for me to believe that, and even now, like I've still got to like work myself up to to initiate something with other people. I've still got that sense of the potential for rejection
Mm.
and the pain that causes. But yeah, I'm more resistant to that now. Like I'm more resilient around rejection now.
Mm.
I understand more, at a feeling level. Like I'd all read about it and all that, but I've got the understanding at a feeling level. The rejection's just a statement of personal taste. It doesn't say anything about me as a human being
Mm-hmm.
or about my values. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a slow unfolding rather than one specific thing that changed it. Because I definitely feel seen in my relationships. I get lots of affirmation and love and desire in my relationships. So for me, it was a matter of believing that and opening up to it, allowing it.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it can take some
Yeah,
time to get over that fear of rejection, right? It's a muscle almost that you have to work
yeah,
out and get stronger.
absolutely. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Like working it definitely helps with that, but it's still there. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I know that I can work through that resistance and good things happen.
Beautiful. Now, the study also suggests that for many people, true satisfaction isn't just about climax, it's about connection, meaning, and emotional resonance. Does this resonate with you? Can you have climax without sexual satisfaction and sexual satisfaction without climax?
I can definitely have sexual satisfaction without climax.
Mm-hmm.
Depends what you mean by climax too.
Orgasm.
Yeah, look, I'm able to experience orgasmic sensations in my body pretty easily,
Mm-hmm.
and and I can initiate it myself just through meditation and breathing practices.
Amazing.
Uh, it's pretty cool,
Mm-hmm.
and it's even more intense when I'm playing with someone. I can have these orgasmic sensations through my body just from being stroked, and and not in um, even not in erogenous zones or you know typically erogenous zones. So
Mm-hmm.
it could be arms or legs or stomach or back. I can feel those sensations. So I do have these sort of orgasmic sensations fairly easily, but I also um, I'm really satisfied. Like if I'm playing with someone where I'm giving them all the attention, just the sense of endorphin I get from seeing and feeling their body and their pleasure, that's a huge um, turn on it, and I get a huge sense of satisfaction from that, even beyond the ego thing of making, like helping someone to have an orgasm. Just knowing that my interactions with them are giving them pleasure
Mm.
is hugely satisfying, and it's also physically satisfying to me to look at my lovers and to feel their bodies
Mm.
without orgasm.
Mm. So you mentioned
So
you can have these orgasmic sensations throughout your body. Have you
yeah,
always been able to do that, or is that something you had to practice and build up to? How did you arrive at that place?
pardon me. So I I think I've already said I'm a pagan. I practice pagan spirituality,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things I did with that, some of the experience I had were erotic experiences with with entities like gods and spirits and that sort of thing in my imagination, and through doing that, I found that over time it became more and more real to the point where I'd start having these physical sensations in my body, and not just on the surface of my body, but even inside there would be. It felt like I was being energetically, somewhat physically stimulated, like right through my body from the skin to the core.
Mm.
Uh, and then I found. Then I read. Well, actually, I went to an introduction to a workshop by Barbara Corrales,
Oh, yeah.
and she the creator of Urban Tantra,
Mm-hmm.
and she talked about her idea of breathgasms, and it sounded like pretty much exactly the same as what I'd been experiencing.
Mm.
So then I started experimenting with it outside a spiritual, like pagan, um, deistic context, and started experimenting with it just in a sexual context, and found that I could have these same sensations just with me without the sense that something else was involved. So, and I refined that side of it a bit by reading Barbara's books and just practicing more with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's a fascinating woman. And it's so interesting that you were doing the practices before you read about it or found someone else that was doing it. It was coming naturally to you.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah. I was impressed when I heard about her stuff.
Mm-hmm.
At the time I heard that, I couldn't afford to do her course. I was, but I definitely went out and bought all her books and read them.
Mm-hmm. So, Hawthorn, given all of your life experience across identities, scenes, spiritual practices, what do you think most people get wrong about what leads to lasting satisfaction?
Um, that satisfy. I think that the thing people get wrong is they think satisfaction is a thing they can grasp and hold on to.
Mm.
And to me, it's something that you've just got to let flow through you and be open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And and if you try and catch it and contain it, you lose the essence of it. It kills it.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas if you create within yourself the mindset and the emotional set and emotional skills to feel that and value it and like fully experience it, but not try to hold on to it.
Mm-hmm.
That to me, that's how you feel the greatest satisfaction.
Mm. Beautifully said.
Thanks.
Now, you've also described yourself as an exhibitionist and that you love talking about Eros. Where do you think that love of being seen in your erotic truth comes from? And have you always been this way, or was it something that you evolved into?
Um, I think I might have evolved into that.
Mm.
I I found in my early 20s that I enjoyed public speaking in very specific circumstances. Like my first experience was I belonged to a pagan group in when I was living in Sydney, and we'd take it in turns to give a talk on a subject, and the first time I did it, I was shaken like a leaf the whole way through. I was so nervous, and this was like just half a dozen people that I knew quite well,
Mm.
but I was also like so ecstatic afterwards that I kept doing it and I practiced I used breathing meditations to relax enough so that I could actually speak. Like I was that nervous, I couldn't even speak until I
Mm.
did these relaxing exercises. And I just started doing more and more of that. So, talking about deeply satisfying subjects that, about the essence of what it is to be human
Mm.
and, and maybe even, what it means to go beyond being human. Um, just really turned me on and I love it. And sex was like an obvious continuation of that.
Mm.
So, and then, that was just talking about it. And then when I started going to play parties and doing scenes at play parties, that just that blew me mind. Um, I think from the time I'd heard about play parties, I had this fantasy of getting fucked by a woman wearing a strap on at a party in front of a heap of people, and like that was a fantasy I never thought I'd get to experience, but I eventually did.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and it was great. Like the sensation and the things you can do and the duration that we can do when we play is a lot greater when we're just on our own in private. Like there's no time constraints, no one else is waiting to use the equipment or that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but yeah, doing it at a party with people watching is is fun. It's like I get a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment out of that. It's an endorphin rush.
Mm.
So yeah, and like one time and another time we were doing a scene at a party, we are doing a CBT scene, and I was completely out of it. I was almost totally unaware of the room around me, but at one point I opened my eyes and there was like a wall of people in front of me watching what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And that blew my mind in that instance. So yes, that definitely fed my exhibitionistic side.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it would. Now,
Yeah.
as part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share, such as a quote, book, or a movie that's influenced your sexuality. And you mentioned that you have a few things to share. I'd love to hear about them now.
Yeah. So probably the first book that influenced my sexuality that I can remember. There may have been other things, but one of the first things I remember that sort of changed it from what it was before I read this was it was a dream dictionary. I think it was by a guy called Tom Chetwynd,
Mm-hmm.
and he gave Jungian explanations for dreams, you know, dream themes, and he um, he talked about anima and animus, and that sort of triggered my exploration of
Mm.
gender, gender expression, and even though I didn't have the words then, like those words weren't common back at that was when I think I said I think that was around when I was like early puberty or maybe mid puberty. Um, so that just opened my mind to things that no one else I knew was they either weren't thinking about it or they certainly weren't talking about it. So that set me off on an exploration. The next book I read was a book called The Cosmic Trigger, The Final Secret of the Illuminati by a guy called Robert Anton Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that the book goes everywhere. It's a wild ride, intellectual ride just reading it. Um, but his basic idea in the book is that like reality's not a thing. It's how you relate to things and that it can change. Reality's not just one thing. There's lots of different realities. So it was a very relativistic view of the world, and I loved that. It just that woke something up in me. And he also mentioned a guy called Wilhelm Reich, who was a he was a psychologist originally in Germany. He got chased out of Germany by the Nazis. I think he got chased out of Switzerland for being too sexually open. Then he went to America, and they end up persecuting him and burning all his books, and he died in prison. And I thought, well, someone who's able to upset right wing and left wing and middle wing has got to have something worthwhile to say. And reading his ideas about sexuality and body armor, the idea that trauma gets fixed in your body and it inhibits your ability to feel pleasure. That changed me, and I explored his ideas, and I explored, working with it. I did several sessions of deep body work, which was one way of breaking down that, because he believed this emotional armor was held in your body as and he called it body armor. And deep tissue massage is one way of breaking that down. So I did that. I did meditations and breathing exercises, and to open up my sexuality and free myself of that body armor. Reich said, in a sex negative society like the one we live in, it's almost impossible to completely free yourself of body armor. But I think by constantly working at it and being open-minded and being open to change and moving your body in ways that keep reminding you to be open and be flexible in your mind, body, emotions, and sexuality, I think you can wind up being a lot freer and a lot more open than you were before that. So that had a huge impact on my sexuality and the way I was in the world, and it conformed my generally sex positive view, but it showed me that like sex positivity is not just a personal thing, it's a social thing. And he attributed a lot of the cruelty and viciousness in society to a systemic social malaise caused through body armoring and internalized, projecting your fear and hatred out onto others and pain. So that had a huge effect. And then probably the last book that had a big effect on my sexuality was a book called Masturbation, Tantra and Self-Love by Margot Wood, or Woods, I'm not sure. And that it's not like any other Tantra book I've read. There's no chakras or meditation or stuff. Well, there is meditation, but there's no talk of chakras and asanas or anything like that. And all it is, it's a super simple technique, and it changed my sexuality. And what it is, for 30 days you don't have sex with anyone but yourself. When I did that, I was married, and my wife still wanted to have sex, so I would like have sex with her, but not reach orgasm myself. And so for that 30 days, I actually did it for a moon cycle rather than 30 days. So it was 28 days for me. I only reached climax with myself. And what you do is you stimulate yourself to just before the point of orgasm, before the point of no return. And then you stop stimulating and you focus your attention on your heart. And after a while, what happens, it feels like the erotic energy what I felt was that the erotic energy that was in my genitals moved up to my heart. And that was a super emotionally intense sensation to feel feel my heart filled with sexual energy.
Mm.
Um, and like over that 28 days, I learned to also move that energy through my body. And what I recognized was that that energy was similar to the sort of uh, energy, and I'm using energy because that's the only word we've got. You know, you could equally call it enthusiasm or prana or you know other words like that. But
Hmm.
that sense of an internal energy, physical, emotional, erotic, spiritual energy. Um, I noticed that that was something I'd experienced from time to time when I was doing pagan rituals, but it was a bit hit and miss.
Mm.
And after doing this exercise, it became much more reliable to get into a state where I could physically feel that energy. And that's when it was after reading that book that I started doing the work with, you know, sex magic with spirits and entities. So that book was pretty much what led me to where I am now with this with a very open sexuality and the ability to be self-contained with pleasure, but also like really um, loving, sharing, and interacting with other people on a sexual and level. And it's much easier. I found it much easier to connect with people physically than to find someone who's open to the spiritual connection as well. So
Hmm.
that can freak a lot of people out.
Mm. It sounds like you're
But
in
yeah,
a yeah, it sounds like you're in a really wonderful place with your sexuality, and thanks for sharing those three books. The last one in particular has interested me because I haven't heard someone describe a book that basically teaches Tantra without the teaching of the chakras. So that sounds really interesting.
yeah, right.
Hmm.
I was fascinated. I still think there's a lot of value in the other types of tantra.
Hmm.
Like this is only one way of doing one thing,
Hmm.
but certainly unlocked a door for me.
Mm. Yeah, I'll have to look it up. Thank you for that.
No worries.
Now, I have another tradition on the podcast where I ask you a question sourced from one of our listeners. And today's question is a great one. It is, how did you realize you were kinky?
Um, so again, when I was in my early teens, I used to buy a men's magazine. It was an English men's magazine, and it was very explicit. I don't think you can buy that sort of magazine at that age now. But things were a bit looser, which
Hmm.
is weird.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so this men's magazine was very explicit, and it had lots of well, at the time when I was reading it, they had quite a lot of stories and articles about femdom in particular, but kink generally. But the femdom ones were the ones that really turned me on. So, I sort of started experimenting as much as I could, um, when I was masturbating with, you know, sensations of pain and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, I was really turned on by that idea, but it was much, much later. It wasn't till after I'd been married a few years that I got the confidence to tell my wife that I was kinky, and we started exploring that sort of thing. So that was like possibly, yeah, 7, 8, 9 years later between, you know, awakening that urge and expressing it.
Hmm.
So,
Now, I wanted to get into the kinky toys that you mentioned earlier. You say that you create both ritual objects and kinky toys. How did this come about?
I started out making ritual objects. When I got into paganism, there weren't a lot of, witchcraft or Wicca and all that weren't a thing in the popular imagination. It was very hard to find stores that sold that stuff. Took me years to find one in Melbourne, um, and they didn't have much range. There wasn't, particularly in Australia, there just wasn't much. And Wicca's like it's traditional Wicca's very a big part of it is having physical tools to express the spiritual ideas, um, and they just weren't available. So I started. I made my own fairly simply, um, but then yeah, then I used to work as a carpenter, and when I stopped doing that, I moved into the disability field. I After a while, I was missing doing woodwork, but I didn't want to go back to carpentry. So I took up wood carving,
Mm-hmm.
and I started carving miniature um, animal carvings in the style of Japanese netsuke, um, and I really enjoyed that. And then I realised I could make, you know, all the pagan tools that I wanted. I could, if I wanted an altar statue, I could make my own. If I wanted a wand, I could make my own. So I started doing that, and then pagan friends were interested in them and asked if I could make them. So I made more of them, and then I made I made our first flogger that we played with, and as I played and got more aware of the different tools and that were available, I started making like paddles and clubs and more floggers and dragon tails and
Fun.
sensation. Mm,
Mm.
yeah, sensation toys, um, and furniture. So there's pictures of all this stuff on my FetLife page,
Mm-hmm.
um, which I can't remember what one. I think it might be Magic Hawthorn or Hawthorn Magic.
I think it's Hawthorn Magic.
Right. I can never remember because I don't need to look it up.
I can put a link to it in the show notes if you like, so people can have a look at your
Yeah,
toys if they
cool.
want to see them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think I've got a range of everything on there. There's plenty of kink toys, but I think I've also got a few pagan pieces and even some Netscape. So, yep,
Wonderful. I also noticed that you
thanks.
enjoy reading and writing erotica on your page. What has this process taught you about yourself?
Um, Reading erotica has definitely given me ideas,
Mm-hmm.
and generated fantasies. Um, like I was reading erotica, reading kink erotica before I ever got the chance to practice it. Um, and yeah, I'm not sure with writing it. I'm not sure which way that process goes, whether I'm writing things I want to do or writing things I have done. I think it's a bit of a mix of both. So sometimes I'll write a story to tease out an idea about a scene, but I'll also take scenes that I've done and fictionalize them into an erotic writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I
Oh,
also, so yeah,
I was going to ask if you would be open to reading some of your erotica for us. I have a link here to one of your FetLife writings that I was hoping you would read. Are you open
yeah,
to
sure.
that? I can send through the
Yeah, I'm open to
link.
that. Yep.
I've sent it through on Zoom. I can send it on FetLife if you prefer. Let me know if you've received it.
Yeah, I've got it. I'll just
Okay,
open that.
cool. Yeah, if you're comfortable reading it, I'm sure everyone would love to hear.
Yeah. Yep. So, so I usually often start um, Eros with saying the genders that are involved and any triggers. So for genders, I've just put yes. and triggers a restraint and pain.
Mm-hmm.
So tied to the bed. Let me just take a drink.
Sure.
Tied to the bed, spread eagle, naked, blindfolded. My happy place as I wait with anticipation. A brief scratch of sound and the sulphurous smell of a freshly lit match. What is going to happen next? A warm hand on my cock, not what I was expecting. They bring me to the edge of orgasm, then stop. The wet, cold embrace of a handful of ice shocks my balls, and I am soon writhing and gasping in pain as the cold penetrates. More ice on the head of my cock drives me wild, and I beg for mercy. The hand withdraws, and I sigh with relief. Then intense sensation hits the head of my cock, and I shout in pain and surprise as I remember the candle that was lit earlier. So much tender skin to explore, they whisper. It's going to be a long afternoon. Thank you.
How fun. Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, that was fun.
So, Hawthorn, you're in your 60s now. What's next for you in your erotic exploration? What are you looking forward to?
Kind of whatever happens. I'm pretty, I'm loving where I am now. And I feel like, yeah, I'm very satisfied with where I am now. So I'm happy to see where that journey takes me.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of going overseas to a kink event overseas.
Yep. Fun.
But yeah, but I'm not feeling good about traveling to the States at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to avoid that for a few years,
Fair
and
enough.
hopefully the situation there settles down. But yeah, Europe would be interesting as well. Also, a friend of mine runs spiritual kink events, and we're just discussing the possibility of him doing one in Melbourne in the next year or two.
Oh, cool.
And having me and another person that I've done a lot of ritual work with, presenting a group ritual event, like Kink pagan ritual event.
Mm-hmm.
So that's still early days, but that'll be great if that happened.
Sure, would keep us updated, please. I'd be very interested to hear about that.
I will.
Yeah, thank you. Now, if I was to ask you to sum up your sexuality in one word, what word would you choose today? Is it fluidity or is there something else for you?
Yeah, fluidity's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
Experimental, I think I'm still experimental.
Love it.
Yeah, and open-minded.
Wonderful. Well, I'd like to thank you for being so open-minded and sharing yourself with me and our listeners today, Hawthorn.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. Thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please follow and rate the show as it helps us reach more people like you. The Erotic Realm is also expanding rapidly right now. We're now listened to in 117 countries. If you or someone you know would like to sponsor this growing project, especially if you're based in the US, I'd love to hear from you. Sponsorship inquiries can be directed through my Substack, linked below, or by contacting me directly through my website, psychologyofdesire.com. Thank you for supporting independent erotic psychology. Also, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, I'm always looking for new people to chat to. Head to psychologyofdesire.com to apply. Thanks for listening, and as always, stay perverted.